I'm a kid of the 90s, which means I grew up with Nickelodeon cartoons, Lisa Frank Trapper Keepers, and, above all else, the legendary grade school book fair. If anybody else ever went to a grade school book fair, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that one week in the year where they roll out these big steel cases full of books. They've got educational toys and all sorts of trinkets, and however you earned money at home, you could bring that money in and in some capacity walk away with what felt like total treasure. Now, everybody had the thing that they wanted, and since maybe I wasn't the best good reader, I always gravitated towards some of the toys and the trinkets. And most of all, I really loved bringing home a brand new bedroom wall poster. I wasn't quite into bikes yet, and so at this time it was all about cars for me. And when you could go in there, you could get a big poster of Italian exotics, things like the Lamborghini Countach, or you could get something from America like a Corvette. And you could take that home and it would somehow transport you out of your ho-hum life where your parents drive you to school every day in a Ford Escort station wagon into this world where you're the adult, where somehow I'm dropping my kids off at school with doors that fly up and I'm doing burnouts as I leave. Now, I know we haven't talked about bikes yet, but here's the thing. That dream as a kid is what you always want. You don't want to live the ho-hum life that you see your parents living. What you really want is something that feels like you've elevated yourself to this brand new life. And that is the problem. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Cervelo Caledonia, a bike that fits firmly within the endurance category. And what I gotta say is that there is not a single bike in the endurance category that actually gets your blood pumping, that makes you excited to ride. They're all stodgy, long, slow, stable. They use all these words that make you feel like you've got a bike that is less than the bike they race in the Tour de France. Well, I've got good news. I think for once, the Cervelo Caledonia might be the one that checks that box. Hit me with some B-roll. All right, so thanks for hanging around. If you made it through my long preamble, please click subscribe. We're doing our best here. Even if we're not funny, just give us the pity. So let's frame up what an endurance bike is for. The concept really comes out of the idea that not everybody is riding on perfect, pristine roads, and not everybody is racing in the Tour de France. There are a lot of people that are best served by a bike that helps smooth out chip seal and that makes potholes disappear. They also don't want a bike that's gonna go into a corner and make it feel like they're on a racehorse getting ready to buck them off midway through. The other thing that we're starting to notice is that there are a lot of people that are going away from typical racing, where you pin a number on and you go battle it out with your buddies. A lot of people are starting to set their own personal goals, things like distance or time. And if you're gonna be on a bike all day long, or if you're doing 100 miles or more, you want a bike that's going to be very comfortable. Now, the problem that we start to see is that a lot of people don't necessarily think endurance bikes are cool. So they end up moving into that race bike category and buying a bike that really doesn't fit what they're trying to do. And that's where the Caledonia comes in best. Before we get into the features, there are actually two different Caledonias. There's the Caledonia and the Caledonia 5 Series. The Caledonia 5 Series is a little higher in spec and features a lot of things that are integrated into the bike, but the great thing about both of those models is they were both built with the same stiffness and handling targets built in. All right, so I'm gonna break it down into the two different models. The Caledonia 5 comes with a few different features. For one, it is a lighter weight frame set. Comes in around 900 grams painted and with all the parts you need to build it. It has the integrated handlebar that is shared by the R5 and the Aspero, which makes routing up the cables completely hidden from everything, and it goes through the bar, through the stem, and down into the frame. The Caledonia 5 also shares the D-shaped seat post that you get from the R5. And the frame has an integrated wheel cutout in the back of the bike. And if you look up near the fork, you'll see that the fork actually smooths into the frame. Those are touches that, of course, they do help a little bit with aero, but what they really give you is a package that looks nice tip to tail. The standard Caledonia drops the D-shaped seat post and opts for a round seat post, and also gets rid of all of the integration on the front end. Instead, what you're gonna find is traditional round steer tube, easy to work on, typical round spacers, normal stem, normal handlebar. All of those things make it really easy to work on the bike. When you look a little more closely at the frame, you also drop that cutout and the front end integration, but altogether you get a really similar clean look and aesthetic of the bike. All right, let's talk a little bit about the shared features between the two bikes. I mentioned it earlier, but both of these bikes were engineered so that their stiffness targets were identical. That means that you're gonna get the same handling, feel, and precision as you go into corners. The Caledonia also features dropped seat stays. Now, this is a pretty common thing these days. I think whenever you look at pretty much any new bike, you're starting to see that most bikes are coming with the seat stays dropped a little bit lower. A lot of bikes are doing that for aerodynamic characteristics. If the chain stays hit the bike lower, that means air is not hitting them and you've got a faster frame. The Caledonia, on the other hand, realizes that the lower that the chainstay hits on the seat tube, the harder it is for vibration from the road to hit the rider. That ends up making for a much smoother ride. Just another thing on the back of the bike, and we mentioned it earlier, but the Caledonia 5 Series does share the same D-shaped seat post as the R5 bike. What that also does is provide a little bit of compliance in the back end of the bike, so you get a very smooth and compliant rear end. All right, so next let's look at tire clearance. On the Caledonia, you can go all the way up to a 34C tire. Now, that is what Cervelo is able to sell the bike with. Lawyers get in the way and they say that you have to have a certain amount of clearance around the tire. So while I am not telling you you can put in a bigger tire, I am saying that it is potentially maybe possible. If you want to jump into a little bit more of an in-depth comparison to the geometries, go ahead and jump to the page. There's a link to that in the description down below. But the difference between this and something like an R5 or a true race bike is pretty slight. What you've got is a 72-degree head angle, which is slightly slacker. You've got a little bit more trail, which helps keep the bike wanting to go in a straight line a little more easily. You have more bottom bracket drop. And since your tires are taller and raise the bike up and the axle's up higher, that bottom bracket being lower helps you feel like you're sitting inside of the bike. It gives you a very good and stable feel in corners. The other thing that you're gonna notice is that the chainstay is slightly longer. Bike like the R5 is built with a 410mm chainstay, whereas this is a 415. All of those things come together to mean that this bike isn't far off of what a traditional race bike geometry is. So you're not gonna feel like you're on a different planet. Instead, you can go into a corner confidently, you've got a lot of stability when the road starts to get rough, but at the same time, you end up with a bike that feels just like you're at home on another bike. All right, so next we're gonna talk about fit. Now, one of the great things about this is whether you have a 5 Series or a standard Caledonia, the fit range is identical. Same for both bikes. Another thing that's really nice is that the fit range of this is incredibly wide. The fit range on it can go from ultra slammed, so you can actually achieve the same low stack, low fit characteristics of the R5 in a fully slammed position, or you can add spacers in while keeping all of the cables still hidden in the 5 Series bike and move up 67mm tall. So you have an incredibly wide fit range to be able to achieve any fit that you need to reach the handlebar comfortably. All right, so we're getting close to the end here, but let's just cover off on models and spec real quick. You can get into a Caledonia for as little as $3,200. For $3,200 to $5,500, you'll be able to get into the Caledonia family. If you want to move into the 5 Series bikes, those bikes are going to start around $6,000 and go all the way up to $11,500. The model that we've got here on set is around $8,500 and is our SRAM Force bike. This thing comes with a ton of great spec. It's got reserve carbon wheels on it, the 4044s, which are phenomenal wheels. They're also a very wide internal width. I think they're 24mm internal, which means, again, pair that with that 30mm tire and you've got a ton of comfort that's added to the bike. The other nice thing is that Force AXS is, of course, wireless, makes for a really cleanly built bike. And you also get a power meter that comes stock on the bike from the factory. So that's what you get in terms of spec and models. All right, guys, that is a wrap. That's everything that we've got. If you want to know any more information about this, head over to the website. We've got the geocharts, spec, the models, we've got all of the stuff so you can cruise through and look around on your own. So if you've got any questions, like I said, head to the website or get in touch with the online sales team. They are available to take your call at pretty much all hours of the day, and we've got them linked down below. Thanks for sticking around, and we will see you on the next one.